This is the future.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another Warframe video. So today I want to discuss about the new augment mods with their respective Warframe builds. My community is excited about the upcoming augments and questions like will Lavos be meta with his new augment, or will we see a new best status primer in the form of Nezha merged in the discussion when the new augments were announced by Digital Extremes. Now, I know some will ask me of why make builds already when the augments are not in the game. Just a reminder that Digital Extremes already give us the full description of each augments, and I think they are pretty straightforward on how they work, that we can already formulate a build even if the augments are not released yet. The only thing that is not mentioned were the information on how they will scale with power strength, range, and duration mods, but don't worry as I will discuss them in details and give you all the possibilities for all the builds that I'll be showing in this video. At first, I was planning to make a separate video for each Warframes with their respective augments, but ended up doing a full video on all the new augments plus their builds. I think it's much better, and if you are here to check out the updated build for a specific Warframe, then there's chapters below so you can skip ahead to the Warframe build that you are looking for in this video. However, I highly advise that you check out the other Warframe builds, as there are augments in the Dante Unbound update that completely changes the way you play a Warframe that you might want to try it out in the game after watching this video. Okay, so let's start with Styanax Axios Javelinier's augment. This is the augment for his ability that throws a spear and create a vortex when you hit target. Enemies that are close to the target will be pulled, and this is great to combo with Final Stand as you can kill enemies faster when they are grouped together. Well, not until players discover that you can just subsume, nourish, and replace Axios Javelin to spam his ultimate ability. The new augment is good, but I think players will have second thoughts of using this augment because of Nourish Styanax. The subsume ability will be nerfed in Dante Unbound, but the nerf is not that bad since it will only get changed from a 2x energy multiplier to 1.6x multiplier. It's hardly a nerf, and Styanax can still combo this with Rally Point for insane energy regeneration. However, let me remind you that the energy multiplier is the only thing that is efficient with a Nourish Styanax right now. Even with Combat Discipline, you can't proc the viral spread of Nourish with Styanax right now. You can only proc viral through your companion like the Sentinel, as the viral of Nourish can be added on their weapons like the Verglass to help you stack up viral to enemies. Also, enemies that hit the Sentinel will spread the viral status in a wide area. But in the case of Styanax, you can't proc the viral spread of Nourish since might want the Overguard from the Intrepid Stand augment, and you also have energy restoration from your Rally Point ability. These two are what makes up Styanax survivability, and I think both shield gating and Overguard are the best form of survivability for the Warframe since he doesn't have any form of damage reduction in his kit like high armor values to mitigate damage. The new augment will allow a pair of Styanax Spectres to spawn and throw javelins, creating vortexes on impact. Impaling an enemy will increase vortex duration by 5 seconds. This is like Vauban's Vortex with the augment that increases its duration when you throw another one. But for Styanax, the requirement is to impale a target to increase the duration, and also, I think this will be most similar to Gas Mac Crush augment that forms a vortex when he collides with level geometry. I am also guessing that the radius of the pole will somehow be similar to Gas augment mod on his first ability, but the description said that it will be a pair that creates vortexes, so possibly we will have 2 vortexes active in the field that can infinitely be present as long as we will be impaling enemies. This is the build I am planning for Styanax, and I will go with the dual augment since you can, as these are augment mods for 2 separate abilities, and the game allows you to do this in Warframe. I will also be saving at least 2 Tau Forged Archon Shard for this build and replace the 2 yellow Archon Shard in this build. This way, I can remove Primed Flow in the build and add another range mod in case I want more pull range for the Vortex. The only downside is that you won't be able to use Nourish in this setup, which is fine as you have Rally Point to maintain your energy. Pair this with Zenuric's Wellspring, and if you want to go beyond Broken, then you can replace Arcane Arachne with Arcane Energize. I can see the augment really helpful in team composition such as defense or even the Netracell mission. With Intrepid Stand Styanax, you can provide Overguard to the whole team for survivability, and with Rally Point, you can also give Shield Restore and Energy Restore to the whole team. When you add the new augment, you can group enemies in one's place to make it easier to kill them. This will really be helpful in cutting some of the time spent in the security phase of Netracell mission, and I can't wait to try it out for myself. The next augment that I would like to discuss is Loki's Damage Decoy. Based from what I understand from this augment is trying to be a budget meal Octavia Mallet, wherein enemies that attack the decoy will receive damage with a random status, and the reflected damage will be 350%, which is kind of insane. Just imagine if Digital Extremes let us scale power strength on the reflect damage. In the Dante Unbound update, Decoy now also draws 15% of the health and shield totals of enemies within a base of 15 meters, scaling with ability strength and range, respectively. This should make Decoy much more useful in higher level missions as it can survive a lot more exposure to enemy attacks. 15 meters range is insane as base values, and with stretch mod alone, it can provide huge benefit to the Decoy ability and will grant it enough survivability to withstand heavy hits from enemies. However, take note note that it's only health and shield though, so don't expect that your decoy will last for eternity, and instead expect that you will still recast it in high levels, but not as often as what we are doing right now. Also, you should take note that decoy has insane aggro range, and honestly, I think that reflect damage and priming feature of the new augment will be put to good use. The best case scenario for Loki is he become a room cleaner warframe with the reflect damage if somehow the 350% base damage values will scale more with power strength. The aggro range of Loki's decoy is insane, that the added toughness for the ability will ensure that it can reflect multiple hits before you will recast the ability. However, out of all the new augments, Loki's augment is the one that I'm most skeptical about. This is because I don't know yet if the reflect damage will be good in real mission, as in paper, it's interesting and we can suspect it to be as good as Mallet, but we should not deny the fact that we also have Elemental Ward that reflects damage, and to be honest, it's a shitty reflect mechanic. The safest build I can think of for decoy is a combination of aggro control and priming. The 3 random status will be good to prime enemies with multiple status and kill them with any galvanized status or condition overload setup. However, there's another problem with this, as the status priming depends on how fast enemies can hit decoy. I see enemies such as corrupted heavy gunners can receive multiple statuses within seconds due to how fast they can fire their guns, but this is completely different when we talk about enemies such as the corrupted bombard, which fires one shot and takes time to fire again. Overall, I think that the reflect damage of the augment should be great, or else players will be turning the warframe to a speedster in Dante Unbound update. In case you don't know, switch teleport will no longer root you in place after the teleport and will now grant you a short burst of movement speed at 50% increased speed for 5 seconds, scaled by strength and duration. This change can possibly turn the warframe into a fun speedster, and players might not be interested in the augment for decoy and focus more on a speed switch teleport build. The worst is, Loki will stay as one of the most obsolete warframe in the game in my opinion. Moving on, Nezha will receive a new augment for his 4th ability, and this is one of those augments in the Dante Unbound update that I am most excited of. The augment is called Divine Retribution, and when a speared enemy suffers from a status effect, the status effect spreads to all other speared enemies, and the spear explosions apply 10 times more status damage. This augment appears to be more effective in paper compared to what Loki's decoy augment is trying to do in my opinion. The augment is simple and it could lead to possible nuking synergy. So the main idea is to spread status using a primer gun such as the Cedo or the Kuva Nukor, and then you cast your Divine Spear ability. Just rinse and repeat the process and see enemies explode to their death. The range of Nezha's 4th ability is very wide, that it can impale a room full of enemies with overextended and stretch in your build. The only thing I am hoping for is that the status damage will be decent enough for the nuking part of the synergy. I could see myself subsuming Nourish in my Nezha now for that energy multiplier and viral procs on my guns, so I can add other elements to it. If the augment is true to what it says, then there is a possibility also that every status that we have proc from a speared enemy will spread to other impaled targets. It would be something like Varuna's ability, and somehow I can't wait to try this out with a mecha mod setup that grants the ability to further nuke and give armor bonus to your warframe. This perfectly pairs with the deity warframe, and I'm really excited for this new augment. The next warframe that will be receiving a new augment is Baruuk, and it's called Elusive Retribution. This new mod is both interesting and game-changing for my playstyle, as it forces me to play a different pillage build for my monk warframe. This is just me, but I really love the augment and will try it in the Dante Unbound update. In most cases, I'm using a pillage build for Baruuk at the moment, and I replaced his first ability with pillage. The main skill for eroding his restraint for me is his lull ability that also put enemies to sleep. At the start of every mission, I always use lull to erode the restraint bar and get access to Baruuk's 4th ability, but when the mission progress, I rarely use lull, as the Desolate Hand skill can maintain it. In line with this, I'm planning to make a different variant of pillage, and once the new augment is available, I'll be trying a double augment for Baruuk. I will then subsume pillage and replace lull instead of elude. His first ability can erode the restraint bar, and as a matter of fact, it's the best skill to do it in my opinion. The only problem that it's not efficient is that you are hindered to do any attacks while eroding the restraint bar with your first ability. The only problem though is I need to trim down some power strength to make room for the overextended mod and cunning drift mod to give the first ability 360-degree of evasion. This means that every bullet coming from side, front or back, will not hit my Baruuk while the ability is active. Another problem is Desolate Hand's damage reduction will not be as effective with the normal stretch range build, as daggers will be flying around to seek target constantly with high range. This means that the build is reliant on pillage plus damage reduction on the 4th ability for survivability. The effect of trimming down strength for high range is still good, as the new augment Elusive Retribution lets every attack Baruuk eludes increases his melee attack speed and melee critical damage by 5% up to 30%. This lasts for a couple of seconds, and I bet this will scale with power strength and duration mods. The augment will be insane, especially paired with the red crit setup for Baruuk and the violet Archon shard that grants critical damage bonus. Not to mention the extra attack speed can potentially boost the damage more of the warframe, since we have the option to remove attack speed mods in our Desert Wind build. This is truly a game-changing augment for Baruuk, and I can't wait to try this build out myself. The next augment coming in the Dante Unbound update is for Chroma, and it's called Guardian Armor. This is an augment mod for his Vex armor that allows Chroma's health to take a % of damage dealt to allies. Squad kills restore 5% of his health and increases his Vex armor duration by 1 second. This is basically the answer of Digital Extremes on making Chroma a team player. Do remember that while Vex armor is active, Chroma and his allies within aura range gain the Scorn armor buff once Chroma's shields are hit and the Fury damage buff once his health is damaged. This means that the augment mod is focused on infinite duration and Vex armor for both Chroma and his allies. With the new augment, you can cast the ability once and then just maintain it throughout the mission by killing enemies. The damage redirection part though will definitely hurt Chroma as it's like the combat discipline mod, but the other side of the coin tells you that you can use this new mod instead of combat discipline to proc the Fury buff easily, and possibly it will work with energy restore mods like Hunter Adrenaline or Rage, but honestly I would somehow keep my Gloom build Chroma just in case the damage redirection part will be horrendous and unmanageable. Also, by adding the augment, we can now have a decent range Chroma as we can remove narrow-minded in the build and place something else, which will be good for our playstyle. There will also be a new augment for Yareli called Loyal Marilina. With this augment, the Warframe no longer rides Marilina. Instead, Marilina follows her and casts C snares on enemies with a 2 seconds cooldown. The only downside though is you can't equip 2 augments for the same abilities, which means it's either this augment or the Guardian Marilina augment. The latter will give you the skill to heal your Marilina after killing enemies while they are caught within C snare. Aside from that, Guardian Marilina also gives fire rate and reload speed buff for your pistols. The only problem is that when you are riding Marilina, there are lots of restrictions, like you can't use any weapons other than your secondary. With the new augment, all those restrictions while riding Marilina will be removed, and it can constantly cast C snares. Now, I think that the damage reduction won't be gone, and Marilina will still absorb damage dealt to Yareli, and this is more of a quality of life improvement for the Warframe. In my opinion, the new augment is better compared to the Guardian Marilina, unless your combo focuses on red crit pistol builds. The augment also is great since it's a free cast of C snares that will not only crowd control enemies, but issues a damage vulnerability buff to them, allowing you to kill them much faster. Honestly, I think I'll be enjoying this new augment more for the Warframe compared to Guardian Marilina, and the best part is, I don't have to forma the Warframe and just slap the new augment mod. Next, let's talk about the Parasitic Link augment for Nidus. I have talked about this on my follow-up video on ranking the best looter Warframe in the game. In case you have missed it, then the link is at the video description below, and what I did was make Nidus a farming Warframe for steel path levels with Ore Gaze. Parasitic Link will be great for the setup for increased survivability, as the augment gives Nidus and any ally he's bound to gain 4% max health per mutation during Parasitic Link. What I did not discuss in the video is how it will be insane if the 4% max health will scale with power strength, and even with just a 10% buff. That will be huge for Nidus and his ally. Just imagine how much health can Inuros get with this kind of setup. The only downside though is it doesn't work with health mods, so if you have this augment, then you can't put Vitality or the Umbral version of the mod, but Digital Extremes did not say that it won't work with health arcanes such as Arcane Blessing. Eventually, with an Ore Gaze Nidus, we can possibly abuse this augment since we have constant wave dropping health orbs, and this will further increase our health values. This will be super awesome with the Ore Gaze Nidus setup, and again, I'm also excited for this new augment. Next, we have Recrystallize, which is an augment mod for Citrine. What the augment does is turn his 4th ability into the ultimate red crit skill for all in Warframe. Enemies killed by crystalline growth stagger and spread the crystals to enemies within 20 meters, and as you all know, once we shoot these crystals sprouting from the enemies, it will always deal tier 3 red critical hits, even if you have a negative critical chance in your build. And mind you, the spread of the augment is 20 meters on base values. This is insane as it will definitely scale with range, which will give us more spread range for the ability. This means we can cover a room easily, and we can do red crit damage to enemies and kill them as fast as possible. Not to mention the damage output of a galvanized status gun setup paired with the statuses that Prismatic Gem inflicts. With this simple augment, Citrine will be super busted to play with in Dante Unbound, and honestly, this is by far the simplest augment mod coming in Dante Unbound, but will definitely make a huge impact for the Warframe. Now let's talk about another augment mod that will somehow be a best in slot for a certain Warframe, and this is called Valence Bond. This augment is specifically for Lavos, and it's a passive ability augment that grants 250% elemental damage per ability cast. The ability's element lingers as a status effect on your weapons for 20 seconds, and what I can make out of it is a Nuker build for Lavos that also grants fire status to guns. I say this because normally I go with an ensnare Nuker setup for Lavos. The reason behind this is that I can't rely on the mixing method of Lavos to grant inflict multiple statuses to enemies before casting the Catalyze ability. What I usually do is group the target with ensnare, prime them with priming weapons such as the Cedo or the Kuva Nukor with the secondary encumber would be best, and then I cast Catalyze to nuke those enemies grouped by ensnare. After that, I ensnare target, cast Transmutation Probe so I can cast Catalyze again. I just rinse and repeat the whole process, and what this new augment does to my build is add more firepower to the already powerful nuking setup I have. Not to mention that I always cast Catalyze, so most probably heat damage will be present in my guns always. However, I hope that the heat status is somewhat similar to Saren's Toxic Lash, wherein it doesn't combine with other statuses. Nonetheless, the new augment will be a pretty fun setup for a Nuker Lavos setup. And lastly, let's talk about Wrath of Yuko, which is an augment mod for Kullervo's 4th ability. What this augment does is is allow the Wrathful Advance skill to move the Storm of Daggers to the teleportation location and increases its duration by 6 seconds. This mod is great for those players who rely on Storm of Yuko to maintain the 12 times combo counter of their melee weapon without relying on any combo duration or combo acquisition mods. Kullervo's 4th ability does grant combo count per hit, and this is one of those setup wherein players abuse the 12 times combo multiplier on their red crit setup. Well, players know that Wrathful Advance exists for red crit, but giving more tier of red crit to their setup with Blood Rush or Gladiator mod set, plus the bonus damage that 12 times combo multiplier makes it more insane. Also, this is great for those ability only setup as Storm of Yuko does tremendous slash and bleed damage when paired with the Collective Curse ability. I can see myself trying to create a build wherein I only use my abilities to kill enemies. So basically you would want to cast Collective Curse for the damage spread, then cast Storm of Yuko and just relocate to place wherein you want the ability to deal damage. Just rinse and repeat the process and see enemies dying with your abilities only. So these are the new Warframe builds I'm planning to try out in the Dante Unbound update. I would also like to know if there are specific builds that you want to try with these new augments. Let's discuss in the comments section below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the content and find it informative also. I hope to see you again in my next video.
This is the future.